Welcome to Do You Ever Wonder? The show that brings you answers to many of the questions that you may have, but with no one to ask. Do You Ever Wonder is hosted by Mike Haltman, CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service, who, like you, has always been deeply curious about a wide variety of topics. Each week, Mike will be speaking with guests who are leaders in their field and who have inspirational stories to tell. So now, sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Haltman, and welcome to Do You Ever Wonder? We're deep into our third season, and we're extremely excited today to have a guest who has quite the background. He was the strength and performance coach for your New York Yankees. As a Met fan, I
Ah,
give you a lot of respect. You know, you've done it. You did a great job. And now he is a executive performance coach, in addition to an author of a book, Habits of a Champion. And we are extremely happy to welcome Coach Dana Cavalea.
Mike, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, the Yankees are playing a little bit more like the Mets of old these days.
You know
So
what? Welcome to my world.
I know. I always give Mets fans a lot of credit. There was a lot of suffering that's gone on. I mean, I know new owner. I'm hoping Steve puts him in the mix a little bit more.
He's willing to spend money, so that's all good.
That's Yeah, he's already ahead of the last group, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I love your background.
Thank you.
And on a quick serious note, we're going to go into what you did with the Yankees, your executive coaching, and also your camp for executives. But
Yeah.
given what is going on right now in the world, does that change in any way the way that you have to approach the people you're working with? Do you have to touch them more, or it's just what it is?
Yeah. Without sounding cold and callous, I think right now, like for most of the folks that I work with, it's business as usual because there's not a lot of other options, for them. A lot of the CEOs, executives, companies that I'm working with, they're getting their butts kicked right now because of a lot of what's going on in the world and what's gone on in the world. But ultimately, what my job is with them is to get them focused on uh, becoming profitable, staying profitable, and increasing, their earning potential,
Right.
and not getting too diverted by
Yeah.
what is going on in the world. Because
There's always things.
that's what I was going to say. There's always something going on. The market's a rodeo, always, right? We go through different years where it's elevating well, and there's always something that we're going to have to deal with. And um, we can look at the world, but I also encourage those that I work with to look at their world, you know, um, both home and away.
You know what? I tell my oldest daughter all the time, we can control some things and things we can't control. And you have to focus on those things that are within your grasp. Although it's easy to get drawn away by things, but that's where the anxiety comes from.
Yeah, no, totally. And you know, there's enough. There's so much that's always going on for leaders, that can cause anxiety. But when you focus on the things that you can't control, it sparks even more of that anxiety. And
Yeah.
again, like we started talking about. There's a lot going on out there today. It's just what impact could you make on it? And if you can't make a large impact or an impact at all, um, it's going to frustrate you even more and get you more charged up, and probably even make you less valuable to the teams that you run and operate on a day-to-day basis, both at home and at work. So,
But,
you got to find that balance.
I agree 100%. So I focus a lot on, I mean, I've always been passionate about politics, and I focus on
Yeah.
things, and things make me angry beyond belief. And then my youngest, who's my son, he's 27, but he says, "What are you going to do about it? If there's nothing you can do about it, then you know, don't
Yeah.
focus all the time." But
Yeah. I know. I got parents like that. My parents, they love down in Florida and split time between Florida and New York. And and they love to just talk about what's going on in the political climate today. And I get it. Listen, I have a passion for it as well, especially the things that I'm a common sense kind of person, and when the common sense doesn't make sense, it sparks questions. But I've also realized if you go too deep into it, I say, okay, well, it's got to be taking me away from something. So if it's taking me away from something, my effectiveness is going to be compromised. And then I become part of the problem, not the solution.
100%. 100%. So let me ask you something. You were a strength and performance coach for the Yankees,
Yes.
and not unlike business, I imagine that some players were very focused, some players were not as focused, and your job was to kind of try and bring them in to a mentality and work. I mean, my overall question is, were some hard to work with, and I'm sure others easy to work with?
I get questions like that a lot. And I gotta say, through the years that I was you know, coaching some of the top talent in the game, they were all pretty easy to work with because they wanted to get better,
Right,
and they wanted to continue to earn at the level that they were earning, and they all knew that they had a very specific period of time to take advantage of that. So unlike, I guess, traditional business that somebody could play and perform in for 30, 40, 50 years, sports has a very finite period that you have to take advantage of in order to maximize your earnings and also become known for something.
right.
So if
Yeah,
in a traditional business landscape, you get that 30, 40 years to become great, in professional sports, you get 15, maybe 20 max.
right, right,
So it's a little bit different. So the challenge in working with the players was not really challenging because they were very motivated to improve and dissect where they were weak. And then it was my job to help them create the plans to tighten up where their weaknesses were and to continue to, push them towards whatever their strengths were as well. So it was very different. My wake up call was going into the world of business, like corporate business.
oh yeah,
Like, people blow things off. They constantly shift their calendar. They're
yeah.
constantly weighing like important, not important, important, not important. And I haven't quite gotten used to that yet. Um,
Yes, it, I think the word, and well, I'll ask you about this in a second, but accountability. I mean, the accountability doesn't come down on your head in business as quickly and as ferociously necessarily as it does in sports.
yeah,
It,
well, in sports, if you don't perform, you're out.
right,
There's not a lot of emotion. You could be the nicest guy in the world, but if you're not performing, I can still like you, but you have to go.
right.
And I work with a lot of executives, CEOs, and teams, and I think they hold on a little bit too long because I'll give them another chance. They're nice. They used to be good. Well, listen, a lot of baseball players used to be good too. They're not good anymore, so they have to go. And it seems like a very cold way to lead and run things, but I mean, you're being paid to perform. So if you're not performing, and we've invested developmental dollars into you, and
You
you're
got
still not performing, you may be out. We may not be able to help you. So you need to leave the organization and go somewhere else where you may be a better fit. And um, that's sort of how I look at things.
no, no. I listen. I read your work. I know that you're very straightforward, not cold, but straightforward.
Yeah, and I write with that style. Well, A, because it's how I think and how I feel, but B, it's also unique in a world, I always say, of sugar cookies, where
Where
we want
everyone
to give everyone, you know, just the next motivational quote, or be nice and be happy and everything's going to work out. And, you
and
know,
everybody wins. Nobody gets
yeah,
disappointed. You know what? I came up in the world in on Wall Street in the early '80s, and certainly You didn't have sugar cookies back then. You
Yeah,
had
that was a different era back then. That was I know guys from that era. That was a different group of animals right there.
it was tough, and if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you heard about it. And HR and compliance in those days was be seen and not heard.
Right. And now they're running companies.
Yep.
And I've come across some of them that are actually really good. They get it. But I would I would say that there's a good majority that are just sort of everything's running in this CYA cover your ass culture.
No
And it's
question.
dangerous because you can't ever be great in that. There's too much there's the box is built too tight and too strong. And anybody that has a renegade personality is going to get pushed out before they can actually elevate themselves and the team.
You know what? That happened to me in the '90s. I went to work from Wall Street to a bank, and at a bank everything is CYA, and
Yeah.
I would try and implement ideas, and by the time that idea made it up the levels until somebody, it was finished. You can't innovate. You can't really push the envelope, and that's pretty much, I'm sure, what you're trying to help guys do.
Yeah, you try to get guys to take risk, and like it sounds like what you're explaining is it got to a point, really it got to a person or a board of people that were unwilling to take the risk that you wanted them to take.
Right.
And as a result, it dies. And actually what happens is it comes back, that ball that was rolled up the hill comes rolling back down, and it ends up taking you out because you start saying,
What am I
what am I
doing?
doing here?
Right. You know what? It gets to the point where, you could say yes, but what's the risk reward to you as a lifetime bank employee? If you
Yeah.
say yes and it's a problem,
Yeah.
it's you who has to deal with it. So,
Yeah.
risk reward. People are very risk averse, it seems.
Yeah. And man, I tell you, it's hard to be a risk taker and not take the risks because it's like something running around inside of you trying to punch its way out and it can't get out. And ultimately it ends up killing you.
Explodes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I also laugh sometimes because, again, when you're when you're talking to these executives and the teams and the executive leadership teams, everyone's got these ideas and these innovations. But again, it's like, I don't know if I want to put myself that far out there because what if it bombs?
Right. Right. No, 100%. And that, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah.
is one of the huge problems with business. Everyone wants to just go along, get along, and that's not how entrepreneurship works.
No, I watched this movie not too long ago. I think it's called Air with it was about the brand Jordan and
Yep.
how it evolved. And it was pretty cool, when you saw it was just a few guys that got really into this, right? They saw the potential in Michael Jordan as a college player. They wanted to lure him to the brand away from Adidas and other companies. And they said, we're going to give you your own shoe. And they created a brand with him. And I was like, wow, I mean, I don't know if you would see much of that today in that way.
Like, probably not. But that, yeah, I mean, smart guys given a leash, you
Yeah.
have to, in business as in life, you have to have the ability to hang yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
can miss the,
sometimes,
of course.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And people, I think it would be more thrilling. Like work in general would be more thrilling for many if they were given a little bit more leash.
They'd wake up in the morning a lot easier.
Yeah.
No question. So, to your executive coaching, I know, I love watching Notre Dame. I love watching them hit that sign that says "Play like a champion" today.
Yeah.
I was having lunch with a guy who's like the goat of commercial real estate brokers,
Okay.
and at some point I asked him if he uses a coach. He's been around forever. He's probably done more deals than anyone ever has. and he does use a coach because he says if I can get better, I want to get better.
Mm.
And that's like that's amazing to me that someone at his level still seeks a higher level.
Well, I had that moment of reality when I was probably 20 years old, 21, and I'm down in Tampa for spring training. I'm in the weight room, and Derek Jeter comes up to me and says, "Hey, what do I got today?" And I said, "Wow, like I'm just starting at this. This guy's made millions. He's one of the top players in the game, and he's asking me what he needs to do because he saw me as an expert in my field. He's an expert in his, and wanted to know what he could do to get better today."
So you had to come up with something.
Yeah, so there was an openness to get better, and at the end of the day, I was a young guy that was very excited to deploy new methods to help players get better. And so it was sort of this perfect um, relationship. Now, I will say this: what's really cool is when you coach very talented people, like say your friend that's the commercial realtor. Um, it's you're dealing with people that are very talented, and as a coach, it's your job to really, this is what I say, it's your job to help them stay clear. And if they can stay clear, they could then use and deploy the natural talent and abilities that they have.
Stay clear of what?
Stay clear of their own shit, right? Because their head is what jams them. When the relationship between head and heart gets contracted and tight and tangled, they lose the intuition and the feel.
So, not that it happened to Derek Jeter, but my wife is extremely good at compartmentalizing things. So,
Hmm.
how do you keep everyone's got things going on? You talk about head and heart, and you're talking about it purely in the athletic.
Right.
But
Oh,
what
well, I'm
happened?
also talking about it just even in with even with executives and people in business, entrepreneurs that have to make decisions, and anyone that has to make decisions in real time like decisions that matter.
So, how do you keep the other parts of your life out of that equation? How do you keep your head and heart in the right place when you have something else that is just pressing on you and relentless on you?
Yeah. So there's a word that we use. The word is called action, right? Whatever is pressing on you requires action. You know, so at the end of the day, we're all dealing with pressures from all different angles, right? We started off today talking about political pressures. There's societal pressures. Do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Do I get a shot? Do I don't get a shot? Right? There's all this stuff that's going on all over the place.
Right.
Um, but again, we decide what it is that we're going to give life to. But the action is, what action am I going to take in regards to this? Right. And what you find is the action is actually the decision. So I'm not going to do this. That moves it into where the compartment it should be in.
So, I commented on something you wrote today, and I mentioned that my father used to always use the phrase, there's two types of decisions, omission and commission. And,
Yes.
omission is just letting life do whatever it's going to do to you.
Yes.
And so what you're talking about is that it's important for you to commit to a decision, not just let the crap flow over you and do with you what it may, but to actually do something.
Yeah. Because my belief is the more decisions that you commit to, the closer you'll get to where it is that you want to go. You have to commit to things though. The indifference that many have is like, should I don't know, should I, maybe I will, I'm not sure, okay, I'll do it. That's not living with conviction. So
Right.
what I found, this is kind of going backwards, but like a lot of the athletes that I work with, another question I always get is like, who's the biggest asshole you ever worked with? And you know what I found is a lot of them have gotten labeled as such, but it wasn't that they're assholes. They're convicted people that know what they want and what it is they're setting out to do, which makes them different than maybe even 95% or more of the people that we walk the earth with.
Right.
So they stand out as like these people that are fill in the blank, but they just know where they're going.
A rabble rouser, by another definition, is somebody who knows what they want and is willing to do what it takes to go after it.
Right.
And they get labeled as malcontent.
Yeah.
That's
But there's power, right? And so one of the things that I teach on is a lot is like if you have clarity, right? This is my one of my key coaching principles. If you could help somebody establish clarity, you can't have confidence until you're clear on what you want to do. And you can't have conviction until you have clarity and confidence. So conviction is the top of the spear. That's what makes you most lethal when you have conviction.
conviction
But
that what you're striving for is really what you want or really what you where you need to go.
both. Yeah, it's this moment, right? That the conviction is the top of that spear that is ready for impact on what it is that I want. I know I want this. I'm 100% clear on this. I know that this trade is going to yield millions, right? I know that this is the one. I know it.
How many people, what percentage of people do you think
Oof.
walking through life every day are convicted on some goal that they'd like to achieve?
I think it's small. It's again, it's that sub 10% number. But the thing is, the system has trained people not to be. So your 10% are they're your renegades, they're your outliers, they're the ones that are the outside the lines type people.
Right.
It's a 10%. It may be a little bit higher, but it may also be a little bit less. But most people want to get in line. They want to get in line. They want to be told what to do. They want to be told where to go. They want to be told how much they're going to make.
Right. There are a few leaders, true leaders, no
Because
question.
it's risky. I mean, there's the model in America. I feel it's been built around selling a false dream of security. You go to Maslow's hierarchy and you look at safety and security is one of the key things that people want and need and desire, above air and food and the true basics and shelter. So if you know that people are desiring more than anything safety and security, and you could promise them that, they'll get in line for you.
Right.
And then there's this 10% that says,
And that's
I can only achieve safety and security within myself. No external can provide that for me.
well, I think a lot of kids grow up with the saying, "Don't make waves."
Don't make
Parents,
waves. Because
don't,
parents sell them on that too, right?
yeah, come on, just take it easy and don't make waves.
Play the game. I remember my parents, I just play the game.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't like that game. I didn't like the game.
So you made your
And
own. You made your own
so,
rules,
so, so
your
you
own
make
game.
you can make your own game. That's why immigrants came to America and continue to come here, because you can create a game.
Right. You can, if you work hard, focus, have a good executive coach, you can achieve anything.
Yeah, because you're clear and you're convicted on where it is you want to go and what it is you want to achieve. So it's still a great opportunity that we have in our country to do that. And
Makes
we
us.
can't forget that.
That's why we have the red, white, and blue behind you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my wife and I, we started a farm a couple of years ago, and you
Pretty
got
cool.
two people that didn't grow up on farms, knew nothing about farms, I mean, and we just dug in and we learned and and now we're one of the largest, direct consumer, meat companies in the Northeast
No kidding.
in just a few short years, because we saw an opportunity. We were listening to what people want, and we had an open architecture model that said, hey, tell us what you want and we'll see if we could service it, service your wants. And then you start to hear all this and you start to put a story together, you start to put a narrative together,
Wow.
and
So
and you build from there. So it's really
that's
it's a
awesome.
great opportunity that we have in America.
Absolutely. You're only limited by the boundaries of your own mind, I think.
Yeah, one of my favorites to listen to is Napoleon Hill. Um, Think and Grow Rich. And people are like, you really should read the book. And I'm like, well, I don't even know if you have to read the book. You really just need to read the title,
Right.
right?
No, that's right.
It's saying if you think the right way, you can grow rich, and you can grow rich financially, in spirit, in mind, but
Yeah.
you got to use your brain. You can't just walk around like a zombie. And these phones today have a zombie effect.
But you know what? You have to, you can omit your way to thinking you're going to achieve what it is you think you want to achieve, or you can go after it like you went after it.
Yeah. I
That's a
mean, I
choice.
couldn't imagine going through life not going after things. I mean, I think it would be quite boring to just assimilate. Um,
Well, that's what
and
makes you the top 10%.
I I try every day to maintain myself with those other team members at that level. And
And
that's actually one of the great gifts of coaching. Um, is you get to hang around people and discuss with people daily, just excellence. And how cool is it, right, to sit across from somebody that wants to be better?
100%. But does every coach, every executive that comes to you, do they all actually want to be better, or do many, want to go through the motions of saying, "I'm working to get better"?
Mike, let me put it as simple as this. The ones that pay their own way are usually the ones that really want to get better. The ones that do it under their corporate card
Yep.
are less, they'll blow off a session. They're not paying for it.
And they won't do
So,
their homework.
yeah, so I don't want to, screw myself with this next statement, but for the greater good, I'll put it out there. If What companies should do is they should make their own people use their card to pay for the coaching services. And I bet you they'd show up more, they'd be more enthusiastic, but
Listen, it's the same as psychiatry. If I know somebody whose parents paid for his psychiatric care for his entire life, and
yeah,
he's still with the same shrink, and he hasn't gotten any better. So, if there's no pain, no gain.
right.
I
It's
got a lot of those one-liners too.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I feel the same way. I mean, um, you have to invest, right? And what I found too is that the more um the more cash somebody has, sometimes you got to really up the ante for them. You got to make them pony up and sit at the big boy table. So, you know, um, what I found even in my coaching journey when I first started, I'd work with these guys that started, hedge funds or run PE firms. And I realized my rate wasn't enough to keep them engaged.
It's interesting,
So once I dialed the number up, I got them engaged
right?
because that their psychology works. They're used to big numbers, and there is a number that buys them in at the table.
Well, I mean, I think human nature is that if something's not expensive enough, then it can't be good.
Right. It's funny you say that. I was thinking about the other day. I was like, what if a Ferrari was like 25 was 40 grand?
Right?
Would it still have the same pop?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
It's the it's when you have the ability to reach for something greater than anyone else can reach for. I think that's what gives it the draw. But again, now you have to really commit to doing what you need to do. But is a coach right for every C-suite executive, or does every C-suite executive need the right coach? And
Well, I think it goes back to this main question. Are you coachable? There's a lot of C-suite people in general, right? They're not open. They're not open people because to be open takes a certain level of vulnerability. To know everything is a self-preservation tactic,
Right.
you know.
So you find the older people are, the less flexible they are, or is it's just a personal?
No, it's personal. I mean, there's guys that I coach that are, upper 60s, even early 70s, and they're like sponges, right? They love it. They can't get enough.
Right.
Then there's these 30 something, 38-year-old sort of new to the C-suite. I've excelled my whole life. I went to the Ivy League, blah, 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 blah. And they're just close-minded as can be. They know everything. They're what I call full of shit.
So, okay, I don't disagree, but is there a point in your relationship where they open up and become more receptive, or at some point, do you ever fire anyone?
Oh yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do, actually, because I only have a certain amount of time, and the
Right.
resource that I value more than anything is my time, because I'm very busy. I have a lot of stuff going on. And if you're gonna wait, if you're gonna waste my time, then why are we doing this? You're wasting your own time. Like I had a guy that I was coaching, Canadian, and we're working on making abundance, like thinking abundantly, like so he could have the best year of his career. Because one of the things that I promise everybody I work with is give me 12 months with you and you'll have your best year that you've ever had. Right. And to date, we're doing really good with that.
That's
But
great.
this guy, he lost a client. And the first thing he calls and says is, I want to downgrade my coaching. Now, mind you, we're working on abundance. We're working on seeing a bigger opportunity and future.
Right.
So he lost and went immediately towards contraction. So I said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We are going to reduce our obligation, but you want to reduce it to one time a month. I'm going to reduce it to 0. Because you missed the last 5 months of us working together. You missed the entire everything we did came down to this moment when that person left and you contracted instead of expanded and said, hey, so you missed the coaching. And I said,
What
by
was
the
his
way,
response to getting fired?
yeah, I failed too. And I told him, we're not going to work well together because I failed in this coach in our coaching relationship.
Right. So let me ask you this, because we're running out of time. Tell me about your coaching camp. What you have professional athletes who are working with executives.
No, so what it is professional coaches working with executives. So
Professional
yeah,
athletes
no,
who
no,
are
no, no. But I mean, some of the coaches were higher level players, but
right,
the whole idea was to bring in. See, here's the thing. Just because you are a professional athlete doesn't mean you're a good coach.
right,
So it was about finding good coaches to help the athletes. I mean, good coaches that were able to help athletes bring them into the corporate world, because I found that the corporate world needs a little more truth. There's that saying, right? It's very corporate. That just means it's very full of shit.
right, right,
So we want to create more honesty, with people, because you got to be honest in order to get to where you want to go. So what I did was I said, if I could start to align really high quality coaches that were in professional sports and expose them to executives, it would really create a nice infusion of sports culture, real sports culture, into corporate culture, which would pay some great dividends. And I've seen it with my own work in companies. They're just not used to truth serum. And
So
I don't know everything, but I try to give honesty. This is what it is. It's just that it's the
that's
benefit of being an outside consultant.
is you don't have to kiss ass.
I don't have to kiss ass. I only tell truth. And if you don't want truth, then it's not going to work. But if so and so's dogging it over there, I'm going to tell you.
Right.
First, I'm going to tell so-and-so, but then I'm going to tell you, the leader, because you have to make a decision. It's the same thing. Like my GM would come to me and say, who's sucking? Who's missed their sessions lately? Who hasn't shown up and given 100%? Well, I'm there to give that GM, Brian Cashman, I'm there to give him some names, but only after I have a discussion with the person.
Right.
We don't throw anyone under the bus or cut anyone short. You gotta.
So what would be their accountability if
Well,
if they
well,
didn't improve?
well, in sports, you'd be out. You'd be sent down to the minors, or you'd be released. But a big part of working with a general manager is the general manager wants to size up his team at all times. Like, oh, so-and-so is not performing. Well, has he been training? I'm hearing that he hasn't been as consistent as he should have been. Oh, he's been showing up late too. Okay. So a good GM is always putting together the whole story.
Right. That's what they do.
That's what they do. And then they make decisions based on that information that they have.
And Brian
So,
Cashman must have been was he a good, he seemed like a good guy.
yeah, he was, he still is. He's very involved. And, he's just making decisions based on what he sees.
Right.
I mean, I'd say over the last couple months, a couple of years, I think analytics have driven things maybe a little bit too much.
Right.
Where the old school baseball guys had a lot of feel, and they could say, hey, that guy's good, that guy's a bum, that guy's good.
That's right. Statistics are only that. You really have to have a good feel for people, no question.
Yeah, and Joe Torre was the best at that, because I remember they'd send down all this paperwork for him to look at, and he'd sort of glance at it, and then he'd put it away. That was it.
Just old school.
Because old school, and he'd dig in on the players and have great conversations, and he could tell you who's a winner and who's not. I remember he came up to me in one of my first years and he said, listen, anyone you have a problem with, let me know.
And how often did you have to tell him that?
Not very often.
Yeah.
There was a few stragglers here and there, but it was nothing that required but it was nice to know that he had my back.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's important. Everywhere.
Yeah.
So listen, Coach, I know you have to go, and I just want to say this was great. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I'll buy a steak from you and we can share. That would be great.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Hopefully you'll come back sometime.
Yes, we'll see.
All right. Well, thank you. It was a
All right,
pleasure.
Mike. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Do You Ever Wonder? And we hope that you enjoyed the show. Next week, we will have another terrific guest telling their story. And if there are any specific topics you'd like to hear more about, please don't hesitate to let us know. Our curiosity, like yours, knows no bounds. Please subscribe and like and share this episode on your social media. See you next week.